Hello and welcome to Sage and Stone Homestead. If you have not met me yet, my name is Heather. These are my goats. I have Lamanchas, which are a standard dairy goat breed, mini Lamanchas, which are a combination between a Lamancha and a Nigerian dwarf, and I also have Nigerian dwarf goats. They all have bad habits of jumping on me. We don't want that, but we're here to talk about body condition scoring today. And this is something that a lot of goat owners have questions about, because with dairy goats, they can look a lot thinner than like a meat goat, for example. And within the dairy goat spectrum, the Nigerian dwarves, which they're out there, we'll go look at one in just a second, but the Nigerian dwarves, they say that they can get fat on air, and I would say that's true. Nigerian dwarves seem to be easier keepers than something like a standard dairy goat. This here is Clover. She's a standard Lamancha. I guess this is a Nige. I forgot I had you in here, sir. But this is what I want to show you. Clover is a high production Lamancha. Most goats, especially the larger breeds, will look quite hollow in the morning time. My goats have access to pasture 24/7. It's been pretty nice out, so they've been able to graze. But this is not an uncommon way for them to look in the mornings, and they look nice and fat by evening time. We'll get Clover on the stand in a second. It's hard to show you how much milk she makes with all the other goats just jumping around. So let me get that started, and then I will show you how to tell if your goat that appears thin is actually healthy as far as dairy goat standards go. We've got a nice storm coming in, but I do have some Nigerians out here that I want to show you. These guys are in very good shape. This is my blue cactus nefarious. He's a Nigerian dwarf, and behind him is his girlfriend Foxy, who is also a Nigerian dwarf, and they are very well conditioned. With body condition scoring with goats, there's actually like a chart, and I'll put a picture of that here. It goes anywhere from 1 to 5. 1 is super, super thin and probably sick and close to death, and 5 is obese. It's too fluffy. These guys are probably about a 4. A little bit harder to tell on Nefarious because he has longer hair, but this is what Foxy looks like in comparison to Clover. Now, Foxy hasn't been in milk for some time. She hasn't had to put a lot of excess from her body outward into things like kids or milk, and that is something to consider. Now, Clover here is a very well-bred dairy goat. She's actually placed quite well in the shows that she's been in, and that's something to note. Clover is a show goat, so she has been bred for those flat bones. In a dairy goat show, that's something that they have on the score chart, is their bone structure, and a nice flat bone usually indicates a very dairy type animal. And with flatter bones, they can have sharper edges to them, and that's why a dairy goat, as opposed to a meat goat, they can look a lot more sharp. Now, there is too sharp, and actually Clover is a little bit under conditioned. Clover puts a lot into her milk. This is what she looks like prior to milking. She had twins this spring, and right now she has no kids on her. I'm only milking her once a day, but she puts a lot into her milk genetically, and when a goat puts a lot into their milk genetically, they will pull from their body's protein resources in order to fuel that production. That's what they're bred for. We'll go over reasons that they can be super thin and ways to help with that at the end of kind of looking at all the goats. But as far as body condition scoring, Clover is probably a 3. Now, what I look for when conditioning my dairy goats is how much muscling they have on their spine right here. Yes, you can see ribs. Yes, you can see pronounced hip bones. This is okay, and in the mornings, this sinking in is to be expected. But what I'm looking for is I want to make sure that from the top of the spine to the side of the spine, I can't remember what this is called, but we want her muscling to be like a perfect triangle. We want it to be flat. It can also have a bump to it, be a little bit larger. That would be okay too. What I do not want to see is I don't want her muscling to indent like this. That would be not good. But right now, Clover looks good as far as that is concerned. And I actually had this exact thing confirmed for me when recently, unfortunately, we had a goat die. And to me, the goat looked pretty thin at the end of her life. She hadn't eaten in a whole week. But when I took her in to the vet to have them necropsy her, they actually scored her body at a condition score of 3, which is what I'm scoring Clover at as well. And that's right in the middle. That is a productive animal that's doing their job and is of good condition. You don't really want them dipping very much farther below a 3, because at that point they don't have the reserves that they could need to get through a sickness or a parasite overload. Christine, no ma'am. Come here. This here is another standard Lamancha of mine named Elsa. She had triplets for me this spring, and right now she's got one of her dolings on her. And actually Elsa's body condition is a little bit less than of Clover's. And I'm gonna try to visually show you this here, but honestly a lot of this stuff is hard to tell unless you have your hands on the animal. So we're gonna come back here, but right here, the top of Elsa's spine here, and the side of it, I am feeling a little bit of a dip. That is something that I don't like to see. It's hard to visually see it, I think, but that is what's happening. So I would score Elsa at about a 2.5 as far as that goes. She does have nice flat bone, as a dairy goat should. This kind of thing doesn't concern me. And something else that you can look at when seeing how much fat or muscling your goat may have on them is to pinch behind their elbow right here. And you should be able to get more than just skin. There is some muscling down below, but what I'm looking for is a little bit of fat to be in between the layers of skin, and I do not feel that on Elsa. I have also seen where people will feel for a bone underneath the tail, and if the bone feels super prominent, then they know that their goat needs some more conditioning. This is something that I'm guessing takes time and practice. You'd have to feel a lot of tails all the time to be able to notice a difference, but I mean, I can feel her tailbone here, and I will keep feeling on her tailbone so that I can feel when things change, like maybe she gets some more conditioning, or I can feel on a lot of other tailbones in the barn to get kind of a gauge of what means they have good condition and what means that they don't. So we're working on Elsa's condition while still milking her, because Elsa is a type of dairy goat that doesn't just dry up super easily. She puts a lot into her milk and she keeps doing it, so we need to support her nutritionally, and she has actually gained some weight in the last little bit. This here is a mini Lamancha named Tizzy. She is half Nigerian dwarf and half Lamancha, 50-50 exactly, and her condition is a lot better than the other does that we just saw. You can see that she does have some sinking in here, quite normal. Some goats keep this all day. This is not her rumen side. Her rumen is actually on this side. This side is what is going to poke out more as she eats throughout the day. This side may have this triangle in it at all times, but she does look better than the other two goats. So here is Tizzy's spine. We can tell it's a lot less sharp. So we have the top of her spine here, and then the side of it here, and it is quite flat. But what I can feel is that the muscling on Tizzy's back is actually like curving around this side of her spine. I can physically feel muscling and fat on top of the bone on Tizzy, where over here with Elsa, I cannot. I can actually feel hard bone here, and there's like some, it's probably fascia, you know, it's connective tissue on top of the bone, but it's not muscling. And so Elsa is less conditioned than Tizzy is. Here's Tizzy again. This muscling does come out and around the side of her spine here, and you can really feel the difference. It's one of those things you're gonna have to poke around in your herd to feel the major differences going on there. Tizzy also does make quite a lot of milk, especially for her size, but I genuinely think that the influence of the Nigerian dwarf on the mini Lamancha breed helps them hold condition more, while also having a lot more capacity than, you know, like a normal Nigerian dwarf would. That's where the Lamancha comes in, and they kind of get the best of both worlds, which is why this is a breed that I'm working working on my farm. Now this here is Tizzy's sister, Shindy. You can see Shindy also has a little triangle on the side. This is her rumen side, and that's that bubble that you see right there. We can see the rumens moving around underneath their skin. That's good. We want to be able to see that. But Shindy actually has been on a weight gain journey. She had twins for me this spring. She has one doe on her right now, and I did pull her little buckling off of her to help give her udder a break. I am still milking alongside her doe once a day, but guaranteed I am putting a lot less demand on her udder than her little buckling was, and being able to eat up here on the stand means that I'm pretty sure she's getting more calories than she was when she was out with the herd only. So same thing with all the others. We're gonna just look at her spine here. She has a little bit less muscling than her sister does. She is a solid 3, and I can feel that she does have some of that muscling and fat that's coming out around the outside of her spine. Not as much as her sister, but she has gained some weight, and that makes me happy. Let's pinch behind her here. Yes, I can feel that I'm pinching some fat as well as skin. With Elsa, I was just getting skin. You don't like that, do you? I'm sorry. That's not nice. So Shindy here is a well-conditioned dairy goat. Even though we can see her spine, we can see these little bumps, we can see her hips, we can see some ribs. Does not want me touching under here. Yeah, I can feel a distinct difference between, girl, I'm sorry. I can feel a distinct difference between her tailbone and Elsa's tailbone. So just go around feeling all the tailbones of the goats in your herd so you can kind of get a gauge for what's too thin. Now I do feed grain even to the goats that are not milking, because I know just by experience that my goats can't get everything that they need just off of our land. Our land is old tobacco farmland and has been heavily cultivated for many years, and so there's not, even though there's pasture out there and there's a lot of it, there may not be as much nutrition in the actual grass blades that the goats would really need to thrive. I do think that that's where some people can go wrong, not because they're doing so intentionally, but maybe they've been steered wrong by people who do live on lush pastures and thinking that the pastures are enough for animals that are not in a productive stage of life, and that is not always true. So here we have Elsa. She was our thin one, our thinnest one, and right in front of her is her daughter Melee, and you can see how chunky Melee is. We don't see a spine at all, do we, darling? So she's just been nursing full-time on mama, getting lots of good milk, and she looks really good. She's been growing like a weed. Right here is another one of our mini Lamanchas named Tori. She has one baby on her right now. Tori is 75% Nigerian dwarf, so she has that Nigerian body. And so she's a little bit more round than the rest, but she also looks really good. So right now this is being recorded in the month of June, and I live in Kentucky. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. But normally I don't feed hay in June, because I don't need to, but because we're getting a storm rolling in today, the goats are going to be cooped up inside for most of the day, and really no matter the condition of your goats, they shouldn't really go without access to forage. Their guts need to be working full time, and that's not necessarily for condition, though of course it helps, but ruminants' bodies need to be digesting all the time because their microbiome is incredibly important for the way that their whole body functions. Actually, their microbiome makes the very essential B vitamins that their brain requires to function. So if a ruminant goes without forage for long enough, they can go downhill pretty fast, and so keeping hay out when there's inclement weather is good at all times of the year. But if you have goats that are under condition, it's not a bad idea to keep hay out full time even when it's nice weather outside. Now let's chat a little bit about quality food and what a high production dairy goat may need. Now I've got goats on my land that can thrive really well and produce really well without a lot of extra support. And a lot of times in homestead settings, I think that's what we're looking for. Now if you have like a herd of show goats and those show goats are your life and you want to pamper them and baby them, I'm not going to be mad at that. That is something that a lot of people do. A homestead dairy goat setting is different than like a show goat dairy goat setting. Homesteaders tend to have a lot more than just the dairy goats going on their farm, and so if the dairy goats can be a little bit more hardy and thrive a little bit more off of the land, that's generally what most homesteaders are looking for. And I made a video, goodness, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point, talking about how registered show goats maybe aren't the right choice for homesteaders. And to this day, I stand by that. And I have my entire herd, except for one goat, is all registered. A lot of them are show goat culls. And the reason that I do that is because usually you can only find disease-free animals that have actually been tested through those avenues, through show goat culls. But with that does come a little bit of a risk, because usually in those environments, in those settings, which are not bad, I'm not trying to trash talk my show goat people. I love them. They know I love them. But with that comes actually a little bit more pampering, and sometimes you can get a goat that doesn't thrive well in a homestead setting where maybe things are a little bit less than ideal, because normally homesteaders want to rely more off of the land and less on things like supplements from the store. Also too, I think that it is okay to sacrifice a little bit of production out of your animals to get an animal that's more hardy for the situation that you're living in. An animal that might be able to thrive off of your less than ideal pasture, that maybe doesn't produce as much milk. To me, that has a lot more value than an animal that needs a lot of outside inputs in order to keep up their production and keep up their conditions so that they can stay alive and healthy. So what happens if you buy an animal that does seem like it needs quite a lot of pampering and attention to thrive? Sometimes it's in the breeding, which isn't a bad thing. A lot of goats are bred for production, and like I mentioned, this production can take a lot of support. If you are unable to provide this kind of support for that animal, it's a good idea to breed them back to an animal that doesn't require a lot of support, so that you can bring some of maybe that dairy into the productive part of your herd while also balancing out with a little bit more of the hardiness aspect of goats you already own. That is exactly what we're doing. We're taking goats that we know are hardy for our conditions and bringing in some animals that have a little bit more of the production quality and trying to get an animal that is the best of both worlds. And that's what I suggest that you guys do as well, because goats are amazing. They're lovely creatures that are often touted to be kind of difficult to manage and to deal with, and there's a couple reasons for that, but I think one of the big reasons is that there is such a difference between the show world as far as goats and breeding and what is ideal, and like the homestead world, and the crossover can be a little bit difficult, but it's not impossible. So having said that, what am I doing to put some weight on some of my goats? Now this does take time. Really, it's best to try to catch it as it's happening instead of trying to play catch up with a productive animal who is putting basically all the calories that you're giving them into the milk pail. Remember, they were bred for that, but we should be trying to support them so they don't get too low, like Elsa is too low right now. I've gone through several different brands of this rice bran pellet. This is the one that I just got the other day, but this was suggested to me by my mentor to feed a stabilized rice bran pellet, and I feed a 1/4 cup to my goats that are a little under conditioned every day. You can overfeed goats actually quite easily, so you have to go slow. It's not a process where you're going to start trying to bulk them up at the beginning of the week and they're going to be nice and bulky by the end of the week. It's not how it works. Goats can even overeat on lush green pastures and get sick and die. We recently had that happen. So slow and steady wins the race. An underconditioned dairy goat is not an uncommon thing. There's a balance there. Eventually I'll do a goat nutrition video. The reason that I haven't done it is these kind of things are really variable. But in general, I think it's important for a lactating animal or a productive animal to be fed a grain ration that has at least 15% protein. And I think adding in a little bit of alfalfa doesn't hurt at all. Alfalfa has a lot of calcium in it that helps support their lactations, and it has a lot of protein in it that helps support their whole bodies. And again, we want their bodies to be optimal so that if and when they encounter a sickness or a parasite, they're able to withstand that enough to get treated and to get better. Now, it is worth mentioning that worms can be the reason, or even lice can be the reason that your goat is under condition. It may not be a feed issue at all. If they have any kind of parasite sapping the life out of them, literally, you're gonna see that in their bodies and a lot of times in their coats. So if your goat is under condition despite being fed really well, number one, it could be just them being very dairy and putting a lot into the pail. But number two, it could also be a parasite infection. And so checking their fecal for the presence of worms and then treating for that, checking their skin for other parasites like lice or ticks, things like that is good. Your goat could have a good red Lamancha score and be not anemic at all and still have worms. I learned a couple of years ago that there are worms that go after the goat's proteins and not necessarily their blood. And so even though your goat has a nice red Lamancha, they could still have worms on board. So it's worth learning how to do your own fecals or take your fecal samples to your vet and have those looked at to make sure you're not dealing with a parasite load, because there's nothing that drags a goat down more than having to deal with parasites while they're also trying to be a productive animal on the homestead. I mentioned a little bit before how my pastures, I don't think they're super high quality. I'm working on that. But also our hay might not be super high quality. One thing that you can do for your goats in order to kind of supplement what may be less than ideal forage is to give them something like a protein lick pail, or in the summertime when those pails can get sticky and a little bit dangerous for baby goats to step in, they have protein blocks. Those can be good to give to help supplement your goats. And lastly, we'll just talk about disease. There are diseases out there that literally just suck the life right out of goats. Yoni's is one of those diseases. They can eat and eat and eat and not gain weight, and ultimately they die. So buying disease-free animals is good. I beg everybody to do that first and foremost when they're starting their herd. Not worrying about milk stars or anything else. Disease-free animals should be the most important thing, especially if you're going to be consuming the raw milk. And then annual disease testing to make sure those things aren't proliferating throughout the herd, because that can be devastating. I have taken videos on doing your own parasite fecal. I have taken videos on taking your goat's blood in order to disease test, as well as a bunch of other goat husbandry type videos. I will add to this playlist throughout the course of probably the next several years, so bookmark that and go ahead and give that a click, see if there's something you want to watch in there, and I'll see you over there.